Alex Kessler, here with my co-host, Marshall James.
Hello.
Welcome to the cast. So often behind the camera, now camera's right on you and your Zardoz poster. Today,
it's great.
We are finishing our set review of Magic 21. This is part 3 of that review, and excited to get into it. You're going to say about Zardoz?
Oh, just that it's great. If you haven't seen it, it's beyond 1984, beyond 2001, beyond love, beyond death. It's Sean Connery in his first role after he stepped down for being James Bond, and he spends most of the movie in red briefs.
It's a very weird movie. Actually, I recommend, at a bare minimum, go watching the trailer. So, we've started doing this. I like to just jump into the content, because that way people jumping on the episode don't have to wait for it, and then we'll get into all the shout-outs and stuff later on. And the first card we are going to talk about today is Sabirah Tulzidi Caravaner. 2 in a red, legendary creature, human shaman, haste. You may pay 1 to have another target creature with power 2 or less, make them unblockable. They cannot be blocked this turn. You may tap her, pay 1 in a red to discard your hand until end of turn. Whenever a creature you control with power 2 or less deals combat damage to a player, draw a card.
So she has 10 syllables in her card name, which might be a record for a Magic card.
And also just bad for me. It's very unkind.
But you got all the way through it without messing up, so I wanted to give you some applause.
Thank you. As far as this card's palatable, I mean, the fact that it has haste is, I think, the reason I think it makes it playable. A 3 mana that does a bunch of this stuff is not necessarily something to talk towards, but the fact that she can kind of come into play, give another thing unblockable, and then swing on turn 4 to kind of do a mini Bloodbraid Elf, but instead of drawing a card, just getting damage in there. And then also can, on turn 5, jump in, tap, and then draw you a bunch of cards as long as you have 2 drops, or creatures with power 2 or less that can do damage. It's definitely a go wide kind of strategy that would maybe play into tokens. I think she's just under the power level that I would consider to be super playable, but she does have enough unique words on her to do something.
Yeah.
And she
seems like something that might have a place as a couple of in a deck like Prowess that has a lot of small power people that tends to burn out the cards in their hand. Because, ideally you'd love to swing in with a bunch of your little Prowess nerds and pour out your hands, lightning bolting and whatnot, and then be able to activate her to, draw 3 cards or something like that. And those could be the last 3 burn spells to finish the game out.
Like, you could have, on turn 5, get her in, draw cards, discarding a bunch of stuff that doesn't matter, not even have cards in hand. She does enough things that she could make a swing, but it might be just too expensive in mana costs on different sides that it makes it not quite there. But I think she's close in an interesting way. Thieves Guild Enforcer, 1 in a black, just 1 black, 1/1. Flash, human rogue. When Thieves Guild Enforcer or another rogue enters the battlefield, until under your control, each opponent mills 2 cards. As long as your opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard, Thieves Guild Enforcer is +2/+1 and has Death Touch. So it's a 3/2 for 1 Death Touch flash that also does milling for your opponent. Now, this is a card that This is the card I think I'm most sad that Ben isn't on the podcast for, because I think he would have a lot to say here about
payoff. Yeah,
it makes rogues better. It makes Jace's Phantasm better, which is another card Ben likes unnecessarily. It does a lot of stuff that he would like. For me, it is. I've now had long conversations on how Wild Nacatl is a bad card with Michael, and this card is worse than Wild Nacatl.
Yes.
In a tribe that is worse than cats. So I don't know if I can get behind it. But for Ben,
For Ben, we had to talk about it.
We have to talk about it. What are your thoughts?
I mean, so rogues aren't there, and this is not a card that puts them there. Mm-hmm. But eventually rogues will get there. I mean, the nice thing about an Eternal format, and I think the thing that attracts people to formats like Modern, is if there is a strategy, if you are Ben Bateman or a Ben Bateman-like person, and there is a strategy that is a pet strategy of yours that is not good enough, as long as Modern exists, they will keep printing cards into this niche strategy of yours, and eventually, on a long enough timeline, the rogue deck will be good. You know, 1,000 monkeys and 1,000 typewriters will produce a top 8 deck for rogues. So in the event that the eventual rogue deck comes around, Thieves Guild Enforcer will probably play a role in that deck. But that deck is not here yet. But keep holding on to your Thieves Guild Enforcers and your Una's Blackguards, and one of these days, Gentle Rogue, you'll have your deck.
Yeah, I think that's where I agree with you, right? This is a card. If Rogues is good, this is a card for that deck. This card will see play in that deck because it is good enough to be better than Wild Nacatl, in the sense that if like Death Touch is better than not having Death Touch, and Flash is better than not having Flash, right? And so you gain those two with the negative of having to like get its threshold requirement on lock. But I think that it does a lot of really cool things. Like, and it's just it's a one drop, right? Like the fact that it costs only 1 mana is great for decks that want to curve, and it has all these other benefits like being great late game as a blocker and being able to be held up so you can counter magic on turn 2, but then play 2 of these or one of them. So there's definitely benefits to it. It's just, it's 100% dependent on rogues being good or some type of mill your opponent and gain benefit from that tribal deck being good. And it's not there yet. Neither of those decks are there yet. The next card we're going to talk about is
Conclave Mentor.
Sure. Green and a white Conclave Mentor, Centaur Cleric. If one or more +1/+1 counters we put on creatures you control, that many +1/+1 counters are put on that creature instead.
+1.
+1.
It's worded in a weird way, but it puts an additional +1/+1 counter on a creature.
And if it dies, you gain life equal to its power. So this is interesting because it's like it's the white version of the snake, right? The green-black
Blinding Constrictor,
which was like a standard all-star the entire time it was in the format, and has seen some modern play in Hardened Scales decks. And this is like a different version of that goes into white, which maybe is a color that could benefit more from +1/+1 counter shenanigans. Plus,
right?
The snake had Death Touch, right?
I think
it's
so.
Right here, and is mocking me with knowing what text it had. But gaining life is also a different ability that could have like more back, because this is like the incidental life gain that's good, right? Like Bane Slayer Angel having like lifelink is backbreaking. Casting a spell that gains you life and that's all it does is terrible. And you have like when life gain is on something where it's incidental, it becomes good versus when it's just there to be itself. And here's a place where it's like just tacked on adjacently as a punishment for getting rid of this card, and does bring up the power level, I think.
Yeah, I think now that we have power players like Heliod Suncrowned that deal with +1/+1 counters, and we have Walking Ballista, like, Winding Constrictor, like you said, it's made a name for itself in the Hardened Scales deck, and now you can play Winding Constrictor in white instead of black, and white has Heliod Suncrowned, so white has some more tools to play around with +1/+1 counters. So I don't know if it'll definitely get played, but it seems like it's worth acknowledging that white now has a Winding Constrictor.
And there's always the benefit of having 8 of something, right? There's a lot of strategies out there that if you're building a strategy around a specific type of effect, if you can get 8 of them, it makes it more likely, and makes it more likely that a combo deck or something that requires that to be good gets more consistent and powerful. And this is a similar effect. Right now, between Hardened Scales, Winding Constrictor, and Conclave Mentor, you have a pretty good selection of cards you can have in play to be able to pull this off.
Do we want to talk about Mistcast?
Absolutely.
Just to acknowledge it? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it's just to acknowledge. So Mistcast is single blue instant, counter target instant or sorcery spell unless its controller pays 3. So this is, if you're worried about instants and sorceries and not planeswalkers or enchantments or artifacts, this is better than Spell Pierce. The question is,
correct,
is the only thing you're worried about that's not a creature, instants and sorceries. And I think there are some metagames where that is true. In some ways, right now, like the only two things I'm really worried about in standard are. That's not true because Teferi exists. Yeah, I think with Teferi being around, this card has a hard time.
Right. Yeah.
Like if Planeswalkers weren't as powerful as they were, I'd be much more interested in miscast. In formats where they are worse, miscast becomes a lot more interesting. Modern just isn't the home for that because you're either like the biggest threats are creatures or Planeswalkers, and then after that it's like artifacts and enchantments. I can't even think of like
Yeah, I think
Scapefish
that's
is the
the
best
I
sorcery.
think that's a problem is like miscast would have been real exciting before Teferi Time Raveler got printed.
Yeah, like
But
a
now that he
year
got
ago.
printed, counter spells that can't counter him because he is like if you're playing a counter deck and your opponent resolves Teferi Time Raveler, you've probably lost the game. Or you're going to have an uphill climb to win this game now. And so I would never want to play a counterspell that can't counter Teferi.
I agree. I agree with that.
But yeah,
Well,
it's
I don't know if I agree with that, but that counterspell has to be able to counter creatures,
sure,
right?
sure,
It doesn't have to get rid of Teferi, but like, because for instance, I would still think about playing what's the 1 mana counter a 2-drop. Like that's a spell I would consider playing still, but that has less to do with
sure.
Teferi, but has
Spell
to do with
snare.
being that good against so many other things, right? There has to be a reason to not be good against Teferi. This isn't that.
Yeah.
All right, next card. So there's 3 zombie tribal cards that are next on the list. So the next card is Liliana Stewart. This is 1 black for a zombie 1/2. You may tap it to sacrifice it, and target opponent discards a card. Um, so this card's interesting to me for 2 reasons. One, it's a zombie, right? It's in a low cost zombie. We were just talking about how a low cost rogue with an interesting ability has just something to look at because you can have this in play and pump it with lords or use it to get grave crawlers back or just other kind of zombie tribal things. There's ways to rebuy zombies more than probably any other tribe. So looping his ability is something that's also relevant, right? Getting that discard multiple times a turn if you can even give it haste, which would be dope. But the other thing is just like not late game, but like mid game when your opponent, you have like 2 of these in play and your opponent draws a card or passes the turn and has just 2 cards in hand, you can just sacrifice them and then you've won the game. Like taking them out with it, and it just like get some damage in early, and then you just hold it onto your hand to make it so your opponent can't hold cards in their hand on your turn. Is an interesting effect that zombies really haven't had access to.
Right. And yeah, so I think that's it. If there's a dedicated zombie deck, because we did get Undead Augur last year, and so any 1-drop zombie that has a self-sacrifice effect for something, like if you go turn 1 Liliana Stewart and turn 2 Undead Augur, and then you crack the Liliana Stewart, you essentially drew 2 because you
Right.
made them discard 1. And then if you play any of the effects that allow you to get zombies back from your dead, like Liliana Untouched by Death, like her ultimate lets you start casting zombies out of the graveyard. So you want as many cheap zombies as you can for the turn that you ultimate her. And Liliana Stewart, it's not bad. Like it's a 1/2 and it has a relevant creature type and ability. So yeah,
It
I think this guy's not bad to keep an eye on. Well, so the one issue is that we already have some really strong 1-drop zombie players in Carrion Feeder and Crypt Breaker.
mm-hmm.
So if your deck is in the market for a third 1-drop zombie, because I think Stewart is worse than both of those. Although Stewart is stronger against a control deck than Carrion Feeder.
Well, I think like Carrion Feeder is a different conversation because it's a sack outlet, right? I think that this is a card to consider though because it does attack on a different angle and attacks decks in a way like there are so many aggressive zombies at 1-drop, but there's not a lot of good like anti-control or tempo based zombies that this offers a different angle of attack. And to kind of speak towards buying stuff back, there's also just stuff like Liliana's Standard Reaver, which is another Standard Bear, which is another card in this set, and cards like it, or cards that return stuff that left the battlefield that turn even, where like you can have 2 Liliana Stewards, sacrifice them, make them discard a card, and if you play Liliana Standard Bearer the next turn, you draw cards equal to how many creatures died. So like that's a pretty big swing, and there are a ton of effects like that that draw cards on people's on creature deaths that like zombies have a lot of ways to play around with it, that just having them be almost their own sacrifice trigger on top of gaining a benefit from it, I think is a pretty layered reason to exist, right? I think it's actually something to look at versus other bad zombie cards that when you look at it the first time, you're like, I don't think this is a thing.
Yeah, I like that the standard bearer costs 3 and has 3 power, so it's a significant threat. And you will always, unless your opponent ramps, you will always be able to get enough mana to cast it before they hit 4, which is where all the board sweepers come in.
And it has
So
flash, right?
if
So
you're able, it has flash, right? So if I go turn 1 a zombie, turn 2 a zombie, turn 3, if I'm on the play, I can play a zombie. If I'm on the draw, I maybe just keep with it, because if my 2 are good threats, if I'm sniffing that they're going to damnation or supreme verdict me, then I could just hold up the 3 mana,
get in
and stick this, draw 2 cards, and have a 3 power zombie on the board. And it's also a zombie knight, so if knights ever matters,
Sure.
this is a knight with relevant abilities that doesn't care if the creatures that died, doesn't care what their creature type was.
Well, and you mentioned Carrion Feeder, right? Like that's almost a combo with this card where, like, and it does count tokens, right? It's not non-token creatures you draw cards. So you can, like, Carrion Feeder, sacrifice, like, attack with a bunch of creatures. They do blocks. You sack all the ones that are, like, unprofitable to Carrion Feeder. Make your Carrion Feeder big, and then play this before the turn ends, drawing like 4 cards, and your opponent taking a bunch of damage, and you having a giant Carrion Feeder and a Liliana Standard Bearer in play. And that's like a lot. That you just did a lot of things to your opponent to make them sad.
Yeah.
Speaking of cards, I want to talk about it because it's interesting to me, from a, like, Enchantress graveyard shenanigans, specifically one card. Demonic Embrace, 1 black, enchantment aura, enchanted creature gets +3/+1 and has flying and is a demon in addition to its other types. You may cast Demonic Embrace from your graveyard by paying 3 life and discarding a card in addition to playing its others costs. So the reason this card is interesting to me, beyond the fact that, like, it is, like, Rancor-y, right? Like, it has the ability just to be an enchantment threat to make one creature that much bigger always, is a card that I love, and I'm forgetting the name of it, so I'm looking it up. It is Strength of the Fallen. I was going to call it Forgotten the Fallen, which that was wrong. Strength of the Fallen, which I don't know if the world knows this card, but it's an enchantment for 1 and a green. It has Constellation. Whenever Strength of the Fallen or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, target creature gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. So this is a, like, self-mill Enchantress themed powerhouse. If you've ever been able to pull this card off, it's, like, really, really, really dope. And this is a card where Demonic Embrace can be in that deck, and you can self-mill it, and now you have this as an available option to always trigger Strength of the Fallen from your graveyard, adding to the fact that it also is a discard outlet if you want to be discarding things to your graveyard to also get them into there for whatever reason you might be doing that in a graveyard deck.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
what
I mean, I
think
that's kind of cute. I thought you were going to talk about Brash Hunter.
He's next. 4 and a red. Goblin. Indestructible 1/1. When Brash Hunter is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target opponent. 2 in their head, Brash Hunter fights another target creature. I know that we both love this card, and I know why we both love this card. I don't think this is modern related. For those who don't know, me and Marshall both have been trying to brew a Boros Reckoner themed commander deck in white-red for 5 years now? 4 years? 3 years?
I think one of our earliest conversations as we were becoming friends at our local comic book store playing Commander Night is over, like, what sort of ways we could make the Reckoner deck do its thing.
Like, going through things. Is there enough creatures to do it? Why isn't there a legendary creature that just does this already? And, like, and for those who don't know, that like, it's basically taking over Blasphemous Act and being able to, or things like that do just a ton of damage, but only to creatures, but then doing it to a creature that can react to a player. Stuffy Doll is, I think, the first famous one of these that ever kind of did the thing. Yeah, I don't. This card's really sweet, and obviously just an auto include in that deck. I wish it was legendary and red white, or, like, right? I wish it was legendary and its, like, fight ability was white, even though that's, like, not in white's color pie.
Yeah. But, I mean, I wish it was a legendary white dwarf who had the fight ability in red.
Yes.
That's what I wish it was.
Yes, agreed. That would be sweet.
This set has 1 new dwarf It has tons of new white soldiers, but only one new dwarf. And come on, Wizards.
Well, I feel
Magic
like
has enough humans already. You should be biting at the chance anytime you can to make something not a human. Because you know what? I live in a world filled with humans. I don't have any goblins or elves or giants or merfolk wandering around California, but I got plenty of humans. I've seen humans all day long.
see,
It's uninteresting to me when the most interesting creatures are also humans.
I have to disagree with you purely from the perspective that they've also introduced a thing that there are a ton of in Los Angeles in this set in the real world, but I could use more of in general in Magic, and that's dogs. So I don't know how I can hate on the humans being the real world, but then be happy about the dogs and the puppers that we now get in this game that I'm so excited about.
I'll maybe be more mad at dogs when dogs are also a top tier tribe that is just crushing tournaments.
I be mad. I feel like I would be really happy.
But and then I might be well because also they're so adorable, like
right.
the flavor text and the art.
Okay, moving on. Watcher of the Spheres, white and a blue, flying creature spells with flying cost you one less to cast whenever another creature with flying enters the battlefield. Under your control, Watcher of the Spheres gets +1/+1 until end of turn. It is a 2/2 bird wizard. This is the second time this effect has been printed, right? The other one was like a cat flying thing.
That made them cheaper.
Yeah, there was the sovereigns.
So
right?
the other one that made them cheaper was Warden of Evos Isles, which was also a bird, but it costs 3 mana. It was basically this card, but it costs 3 and did not have the whenever another creature with flying. So Watcher of the Spheres is a pretty strict upgrade if you're playing a blue-white flyers deck. And I think it's worth talking about because a cost reducer like this, it's basically a banneret, like one of the banneret cycles. And we almost never get cost reducers on a 2-drop normally. So this actually makes it a bit more playable.
Yeah, normally if we get it's for like tribal cards for tribes that are classically more expensive, right? So it's like dinosaurs would get a banneret or something like beasts or something. But or dragons, right? But because this is just flyers, there's a ton of like 2-drop flyers that this makes into 1-drops that like pushes their power level pretty significantly by just being in play.
Yeah, and the fact that it grows, like it starts at a decent size, 2/2 flyer for 2 is really good. Is a good rate, and the fact that like if you're going to be playing Watch of the Spheres in a deck, you're going to be playing a lot of flyers. So Watch of the Spheres is really more like a 3/3 at the minimum on your turn because you're probably going to be casting a creature every turn for the rest of the game. So a 3/3 flyer for 2 that also saves you a bunch of mana. I mean, if the blue-white flyers deck is going to happen, Watch of the Spheres is really important to it.
Right, agreed. The next card is Kaarvok the Spiteful. Other creatures get -1/-1. He is 3/2 human warlock legendary creature.
For 2 black.
For 2 black. So I think this card, it might be a little bit in a different time. This card would be the absolute nuts. Like if Birthing Pod was a deck still, this would be almost an auto include in that deck. If like I've definitely played, what's the legendary enchantment that does this effect?
Knight of Souls Betrayal.
Yeah, I've definitely played Knight of Souls Betrayal as a sideboard card in Modern, and the only reason it wasn't in main decks was because this was because it wasn't a creature, right? It's like a do nothing enchantment. Being attached to a creature that does that, and all of the benefits that come with creaturehood, including tutorability, the fact that it can attack and block, so it's a win condition on its own, and it does just like house some strategies. There are strategies out there that just can't beat this effect. Like this being in play makes it lose, and there's a lot of strategies that just this being in play is a huge detriment. So I think this card is actually really interesting, and probably one of the more sleepery things. I haven't seen a lot of people talking about it as much as other cards, so I'm pretty excited by it.
Yeah, I don't know if he has a home right now in Modern or any other format, but his effect, is strong, and he costs exactly the same as Knight of Souls Betrayal.
Right.
So it's Knight of Souls Betrayal that comes with a 3/2 body attached.
Like I've tried building decks that had Knight of Souls Betrayal and the Curse that does the same thing, just because stacking these effects is also so good. Like giving all creatures -2/2 is like actually pretty backbreaking for half of Magic. So yeah, I'm interested to see what's possible with this card.
So one card we want to make sure we talk about is Necromancy. Costs 1 black sorcery. Choose a card name other than a basic land card name. Search target opponent's graveyard, hand, and library for any number of cards of that name and exile them. That player shuffles their library, then creates a 2/2 black zombie creature token for each card exiled from their hand this way. So this is basically Unmoored Ego, but in mono black, and they get a zombie instead of drawing a card if you hit cards in their hand.
Right. Which is
So
like
so it's
better. It's definitely like, yeah. Continue.
yeah. I think I'd rather give my opponent a 2/2 than a shot in the dark at a good card from their deck.
Well, especially just like the fact that often the decks that type of effect is good against are combo decks, right? And so who cares if they have a 2/2 99% of the time? It feels really similar to Swan Song.
Right. And at least with Swan Song, it's an evasive, like, theoretically a 2/2 flyer can put the game away. But a 2/2 nerd on the ground, like, if your deck can't handle a 2/2 nerd on the ground, then, like, your deck is bad. You need to figure it out. And already some decks were playing Lost Legacy, which is basically the same card, only, it lets them draw a card, and it can never name artifacts. So Necromancer can name anything. And so this just feels like a strict upgrade for the most part over Lost Legacy and an easier card to play than Unmoored Ego.
Yeah.
And I don't know, feels like a pretty good silver bullet finder.
Good find. We missed that card. Came back. Nyambi, Esteemed Speaker, white blue, human cleric, 2/1, flash. When Nyambi Esteemed Speaker enters the battlefield, you may return another target creature you control to its owner's hand. If you do, you gain life equal to that creature's converted mana cost. 1 white blue, discard a legendary card, draw 2 cards. This card is dope. This card is scary in some ways, especially out of humans. This being a human and being able to like rebuy freebooters once the card you stole is no longer relevant, or respond to a removal spell, and then discard like extra Thalias that you don't need because you already have one in play to draw cards.
Yeah.
Like there's like weird, and you can just like play some legendary lands if you need to, like, or play like just like random legendaries that are legendary accidentally just to add that legendary count to take advantage of the second ability. But like the ability to like basically counter every removal spell in the format, plus draw you cards on redundant effects that your deck does play, plus rebuy enter the battlefield effects, which humans does have, is dope and terrifying. And that's in humans. This like has other effects in other places it could be good, but that's where I'm most terrified of it, I think.
Yeah, I think for all the reasons you're talking about, like, I was just thinking that she's in the colors of Reflector Mage, which has always been one of my favorite. And like the idea of like Reflector Maging and then bouncing it, you get to gain 3 life because you're gaining life equal to its toughness, and now you're going to get to reflect again, and you still have 2 power on the board. So you didn't lose 2 power, but you gained 3 life and picked up Reflector Mage, which just feels super great. As you said, being able to like now, I feel like if I'm playing a white blue based humans deck or a tempo aggro deck, like I want to just play like 4 flagstones of Trocaire. Like that card's not bad. When you play a second flagstones, you just get to go get a plains, so it's not like the legendary clause ever matters. But then now Nyambi says every time you draw a flagstones, you can throw it away and draw 2 cards.
Right.
But you also got like Minimo's School at the Water's Edge, which is, you know, not bad.
Like I would consider playing this just in Merfolk, like, and like you have Kira's and Kumanos that you can discard or whatever, or playing it like she can also discard Planeswalkers, right? Like if you like have the second Teferi and you don't need it, just ditch it and draw 2 cards off of it. Like and that's like her like medium mode.
Like how many times have you played a Teferi just because you wanted to draw 1 more card? I mean, I've played a Teferi when there wasn't something to bounce because I just wanted to essentially cycle through him. And now Nyambi's like, how would you like to rather draw 2 cards?
Right.
So yeah, she's real strong all around. And have we talked about Baron, Tolarian, Archmage yet?
No, I believe that was spoiled later. That's
okay.
In the
well, when we get to Baron, Nyambi and Baron have a nice amount of synergy together that also impresses me.
So next card is, I think, my favorite card in the set. I've already bought 2 foils. It's the only card I've pre-ordered.
Ooh, did you get the full art foil?
Oh no, I forgot that was a thing that exists. Damn, we'll need to get more foils of this card, I guess. 3 blue, blue, blue reads end the turn, which exile all spells and it's an instant. End the turn. Exile all spells and abilities from this deck, including this card. The player whose turn it is discards down to their maximum hand size. Damage wears off, and this turn and until end of term effects end. Its costs, as long as it's your turn, the spell costs 2 blue, blue less to cast. So on your turn, it's 1 and a blue, end the turn. Which, generally you can do on your own, but this lets you do some shenanigans. But on your opponent's turn at 6 mana, you can end their turn, which is backbreaking and insane. This is like the 2 cards basically kind of stapled onto one. The first one is Time Stop, which is my favorite card in my Geist Commander deck. But like it is something very brutal. If someone's comboing off, if someone is casting a spell that like you're being able to counter that spell, but then also make it so the rest of their turn doesn't happen, is an extremely powerful effect. It's Time Walk plus a counter spell, and end or more, right? There's it, depending on the situation, you get even trickier. And then you add the fact that decks that you can use it as kind of like a on your turn trick bind effect, right? Or like a counter spell to your opponent fetching on the end of, like the worst case scenario with this card in Modern, if you have it in your main deck, is I passed the turn. Oh wait, I'm gonna fetch at the end of your turn. I end my turn, and then you just like 2 mana Stone Rain your opponent.
Brutal. Yeah. So brutal. Well, and like I think like this card's really strong because it can always get you out of a mess, and it also like now Modern has 2 cheap and effective ways to sort of control what's going on based on whose turn it is. If it's your opponent's turn, you've got Pact of Negation, or no, Force of Negation.
Mm-hmm.
But then on your turn, you have Discontinuity. And I also appreciate that Discontinuity plays really well with certain effects that are bad effects that happen at the end of your turn. Like just the other day, I was watching Saffron Olive play a standard deck that involved Chance for Glory and Tails End. And the plan is you could take infinite turns using Vadrock and Mutates. And every turn, at the end of turn, you would Tails End the trigger that causes you to lose the game. But Discontinuity is basically Tails End in that way.
Right, well, like in Chance for Glory is another example, right? Any of the cards that say you lose the game at end of turn or at any point, you can respond to that effect with discontinuity, discontinuity, and that allows you to, make sure you're not losing the game and gaining that powerful effect that normally would have cost that of you.
I mean, I think just one last thing to really hammer home. This card also somewhat reminds me a little bit of like, I mean, it is a 2 mana hard counterspell on your turn, which Modern doesn't quite have a 2 mana hard counterspell at any time. They are always 2 mana soft in some way.
And the softness in this is you lose the rest of your turn, right? Like if you if you do this during your attack step and you forgot to cast spells you wanted to cast this turn, even if you had the mana up, you now don't get to do that. But yes, it is a hard counter on your turn.
Now the existence of it makes, so many decks would be like EOT, end of turn, I'm going to bolt your guy, I'm going to push your guy, or I'm going to path your guy. And this just straight counters that. So now if you are someone playing a removal spell against a blue deck, you have to know that they can hard counter it with Discontinuity. So now maybe you want to be thinking about, should I bolt the bird in their draw step? When should I push when should I kill their thing? I shouldn't wait until they're already done with their turn to push the thing if they're having 2 mana untapped, because they might just Discontinuity and counter it.
If this card is playable at all, you are no longer allowed to fetch against an opponent on their turn. You're either gonna have to wait.
Especially like this effect makes me want to play Tails End all the more, because now I feel like the prevalence of fetch lands in Modern makes trick bind effects and Tails End effects and discontinuity effects that much stronger. And so yeah, I feel like now it's just unsafe to I feel like it's unsafe to fetch ever now.
Right, like, and that's the medium version of this card, because this card is like, if you can get the 6 mana, this card is backbreaking against every strategy in Magic. Just like being able to end a turn in the response to whatever spell they try casting on their turn is extremely, extremely powerful. And then add to the fact that you have any use for it on your turn beyond, like, at all, and that includes countering fetch lands. Like, then add the whole layer. Like, the other thing, like, it makes it weird where the incentives to fetch are now in, like, moments where it's bad for your opponent. Like, you want to do it during their draw step, right? Or during their attack step, or, like, in the middle of them having something on the stack. Like, you have to always fetch in response to a spell, because then they can't discontinuity you without wrecking themselves. So, like, that's, like, a thing that you just have to be aware of now to be good at Modern. That if your opponent is blue, you need to always be fetching in response to spells, because discontinuity exists. Which I can see people not liking that for this card existing, but I love that. That sounds great.
Yeah.
This card's amazing.
It definitely, discontinuity has added a whole new layer to playing with and against blue decks.
And, like, some fun tricks, you can keep your Angel from Geist. So when you attack with Geist, Saint Draft makes an Angel, and then normally at the end of combat, after damage, it exiles or it dies. Discontinuity, you can respond to that trigger, and then you keep the Angel forever. You could theoretically...
Same thing with Unearth. You could, like, say you're unearthing a Fate Stitcher, and you want to keep that Fate Stitcher around. Well, you proceed to your end of turn step, put the exile on the stack, and then end the turn.
Right.
And now you have it forever.
Yep, there's, like, the versatility of this card. It is my favorite card in this set, I think, pretty single-handedly. Terror of the Peaks is a big card for Standard, but I don't think it's a Modern card, right? Or do you want to talk?
I think just briefly touch on it, because it is real powerful.
Yeah, so 3 red, Terror of the Peaks, creature dragon, 5/4, flying, spells your opponent's cast that target Terror of the Peaks cost an additional 3 life to cast, and whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Terror of the Peaks deals damage equal to that creature's power to any target.
So this is probably not Modern playable. However, this is Warstorm Surge for 1 less mana that has a 5/4 flyer that is then also ornery to remove attached to it. And it's a dragon, which is not an irrelevant creature type.
Correct. I think actually that's probably the thing that puts it closest to Modern playable, is it having the dragon creature type as more dragon tribal gets printed. This is the best not haste 5-drop dragon printed ever, or in a long time.
Probably.
Like Ojutai.
Probably, yeah.
Like Ojutai is what's comparable to this, which is a card that is Modern playable. Like the Storm Breath Hellkites, those guys, the like 5 mana I come in with a 5/4 the turn I play it. I think those are still better than this. But if you're looking for other tribal things, or you're looking for something that's more sorcery speed and wants to take advantage of the second half in a combo way, this is pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Silver's Mote Ghoul, 2 black, 3/1. At the beginning of your end step, if you gain 3 or more life this turn, return Silvermore Ghoul from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. 1 black, sacrifice Gilmore Girl. Silver's Mole. Silver's
sacrifice
Ghoul.
Gilmore Girl.
Yeah, sacrifice the Gilmore Girl and draw a card. This is Rory or Lorelei. It's up to you. I wonder what percentage of our audience understands Gilmore Girl references.
It's only about 50% of the hosts understand them.
Oh, wow. Okay. It's classic. They talk so fast. It's so witty.
It's interesting that this is a zombie vampire, which I think is our first zombie vampire in Magic.
Really? It's the first? I know for sure we've had zombie or vampire ghosts or spirits, because that's blood gas.
Yes. Right, but I think normally they're either one or they're the other. Let me see. Answer the question, Scryfall. Yes, Silver Mote Ghoul is the first zombie vampire that isn't a changeling.
Yeah, there's a lot of vampires that do zombie have zombie things or like give. Yeah, that's cool. Okay, zombie vampire. I mean, something that is relevant to that is like this card is very good with both sides of that tribe strategy, right? Like it's weird that there are things that it triggers on both ends. The thing that I'm most excited about is that this gets triggered off in Dredge off of the melee spell you cast for free that does 3 damage.
Chilling creeping chill.
Yeah, so this if it's in your graveyard and you mill into a creeping chill, triggers this, brings it into play, which then also triggers your prized amalgams. So this is another part of that experience that then, if the 3/1 attacking isn't super relevant, you can sacrifice to trigger Dredge to keep going.
Very, very cool.
It has a lot of words on it, all of them Dredge love.
It's interesting that it also means for Pioneer, Pioneer doesn't have Dredge cards, but it has the ability to play a Dredge-like strategy because of the various surveil effects, and it has Creeping Chill. Now it has this guy, and Prized Amalgam, and Narcomoeba.
Yeah.
So even Pioneer is starting to get into the Dredge game, and so Silver Smoke Ghoul will definitely probably play there.
In fact, as soon as this set's available on Arena, my plan is to try to do, because I had a Arclight Phoenix self-mill deck available to myself, and this plus that deck, like all the cards that we just talked about were just in that deck, so theoretically could take advantage of just another self-mill target along the Phoenixes, which might be what it was looking for. So yeah, I think it's really sweet. I like this card a lot.
It's also interesting that we got what was the Smiting Helix from Modern Horizons. Smiting Helix, the one that has the Lightning Helix that has flashback. Again, like 3 life is a convenient life number because Lightning Helix and Smiting Helix also gain you that much life. So being able to just incidentally get a 3 power creature back whenever you do that. Like the fact that ability costs no mana, it just triggers whenever you gain that life, makes me really interested and enthusiastic about this card.
Prize Amalgam existing just as a card is relevant to that, right? Because it will always be able to be returned by this. Even Gravecrawler, the fact that this is a zombie is not irrelevant to that fact. Or just any parts of the fact that this is a creature that is also or a vampire and zombie. Like, right, there is the tribal synergies that do exist there.
Yep.
Next card, and there's 2 cards to talk about. They're both Soul Sisters related, but the first one I think is the more powerful one. Speaker of the Heavens, 1/1. It's a 1/1 human cleric for 1 white mana, vigilance, lifelink. Creature, create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying. Activate this ability only if you have at least 7 life more than your starting life total, and only anytime you can cast a sorcery. So if you can get to 27 life, you can just tap Speaker of the Heavens to pump out 4/4 angels. And in the meantime, it's a Vigilance Lifelink 1/1 human.
That card has so much on it. Like the 1/1 for 1 with this much upside, it's just
it doesn't
really wild to me.
I don't think it did graduate though from the same school as like Questing Beast, right? Or our preview card. Like it's not a lot of different it's not a lot of different random abilities. It's just a 1/1 lifelink 1/1. A 1/1 for 1 vigilance lifelink, which is not a ridiculous thing to see, that just has a tap ability that's insane.
Right. I mean, this feels like Sarah Ascendant, but much stronger before you hit the number, and maybe just sort of comparable once you hit the number.
I don't think it's much stronger, right? Vigilance isn't that much better than not Vigilance on a 1/1 for 1.
I guess that's true.
So like they're both 1/1 lifelinkers. Vigilance is theoretically better, and Sarah's Ascendant is more terrifying from a haste perspective the turn it turns on. This is easier to turn on, and in the long run is more terrifying, but easier to kill, right? Like I can bolt this still, where I like once Sarah Ascendant's big, it's just a thing I can't deal with regular magic. Well, Fatal Push kills all these things, but so yeah, it's interesting how they separate also the threat. They're like very similar cards though. But that's a pretty high bar to be able to reach. Like the fact that this is probably as powerful, if not more powerful than Sarah Ascendant, means this is just a great card that needs to be played in every Soul Sisters deck moving forward.
Yeah, Soul Sisters has really been gaining a lot. There's a lot of when you gain life, X happens in this set, and they all feel
And
like they're pushing constructed playable. So Silver Smoke Ghoul was one, Speaker of the Heavens is one, and then Griffin Eerie is the other one. Griffin Eerie is an enchantment that costs 1 and white. At the beginning of your end step, if you gain 3 or more life this turn, create a 2/2 white Griffin creature token with flying. So, like Silver Smoke Ghoul, triggers on 3 life, and it's only 2 mana. So if you cast it and you manage to gain 3 life that turn, then it's a 2 mana 2/2 flyer with the potential to keep making flyers.
yeah,
And I feel like you want to be able to make 2 griffins to really make this thing pay for itself. But in a dedicated life gain deck, um, that seems possible, like a Soul Sisters deck, or especially a Martyr of Sands deck, because
right,
Martyr, right? Martyr is always 3 times the number of white cards
right.
revealed. So
It's just easy turns this on. You have to sacrifice Modern, right? But Modern Park can then rebuy it. I think that the fact that this card is very difficult to get rid of, right? It's an enchantment for 2 mana. It's very cheap to get into play, and then for the rest of the game in a life gain deck, it's just going to keep making threat value for you. I do think it's the weakest of the 3 life gain cards. Like Michael's off of it. We talked about this earlier. I'm with you more on that. I think this card is powerful enough and is an additional strategy. I think it also more like modern formats. It has a little bit of other value. The other thing though is that this is also a good sideboard card against control strategies, right? If I'm Soul Sisters and I'm worried about just being removaled out of the game, and then they'll eventually win with some type of other threat. This lets me put something into play that's just going to continue drawing me value against them that they keep having to deal with. So I do think there's also like sideboard potential for these cards that a Soul Sisters almost more than regular value.
I'm definitely just interested to play all these cards in life game based commander decks.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna put both of these. I have not Teza. I do have Teza, but that's not life game based. That's Staxy.
Ooh yeah, Teza
Tristani.
Karloff definitely wants Griffin Eerie and Speaker of the Heavens.
Yes. Oh yeah. The new one. Yeah, for sure. I was thinking more Tristani is who I have built.
Ooh yeah,
Then
Tristani
it's
too.
just straight
Tristani
up
wants
Soul
both of
Sisters.
those guys also.
Yeah, absolutely. Next card, and this is probably the most powerful card in this set. I don't think we're gonna get another card that's really as strong as this card, maybe ever. Like it's actually surprising that they're willing to print something of this power level, and it's a green card, surprising absolutely no one. The power level of green cards nowadays is just through the roof. It's a 6/6 creature. It has trample. It is a dinosaur, and it costs 4 green, and it's Colossal Dreadmaw.
I can't believe they were willing to reprint it.
It's really hasn't it ruined standard enough over the last 3 years.
I'm just tired of getting torn up and limited by this guy.
I'm just really stoked. I love this card. He's so happy to see this boat. There's just like a boat in the lake that he's so excited to find and chomp down on. Hooded Blightfang, 2 and a black snake, Death Touch. Whenever a creature you control with Death Touch attacks, each opponent loses 1 life and gains 1 life. Whenever a creature you control with Death Touch deals damage to a planeswalker, destroy this planeswalker. I think that's just what Death Touch should do. I think they should have
Oh,
read
as
Death
in
Touch.
now Death Touch should just mean
Kill planeswalkers when they. Yeah, I think
like
that.
I think that's probably fair. Although then it makes all these like 1/1s with Death Touch for 1 that they printed over the years like significantly stronger. Not that they were like playable beforehand, so maybe like that's the thing.
Like yeah,
Um
I don't think like the 1 mana 1/1 Death Touch rat or whatever sees the constructed play now because it can kill a planeswalker and attack. It does make Death Touchers a lot better, or arguably it makes planeswalkers a lot worse. And neither of those are things that I dislike. Like planeswalkers not being as powerful, I don't think is a net negative at the moment, and I don't think Death Touchers being better against planeswalkers is that bad.
Yeah, you might be right.
Just a thought. Just a thought. Scavenging Ooze is back. So
Yeah, really, really cool. And the art of it, the full art
Oh,
One looks super dope.
sweet. It's right there, I'm assuming. Everyone's getting a good
Mm-hmm.
look at it. Look how great
It's
it
looking
looks.
great. Looks so great.
The next
Uh,
Kitesail freebooter is also back. Sublime Epiphany, though, 4 blue blue instant. Choose one or more. So this is a super command. Counter target spell, counter target activated or triggered ability, return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, or target player draws a card. So if you want, if someone is countering a spell in response to you doing something to their special hands, you may counter that spell, counter the triggered ability, return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, create a token that's a copy of a creature you control, and draw a card.
so, I mean, I guess the ideal magical Christmas land, right, is somebody has cast a spell which has triggered an ability of their
Yes.
card.
Yeah. Something like
Um,
Dredge, where
like Aria of Flame. Let's say they have an Aria of Flame in play and they're casting a spell. You can cast Sublime Epiphany to counter the spell, counter the Aria of Flame. You could even then bounce the Aria of Flame to their hand. Then you can create a token of your Snapcaster Mage, and then you can draw a card. One interesting thing that I was reading in the FAQ about Sublime Epiphany is no matter how many abilities you choose, they resolve in the order that they are printed on the card. And if you choose the second, or if you choose the third and fourth ability, you may return that non-land permanent can be your creature, which you are also making a copy of, and the ability will not fizzle because they are all resolving at once.
interesting.
So you could be countering a spell, returning your Snapcaster to your hand, creating a copy of that Snapcaster, and drawing a card, and all those effects would happen. And you'd end up with a Snapcaster in your hand, a token Snapcaster on the board with its ability going on the stack.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
Yep.
I
And the
think
cool
it's
thing is, I think also the Sublime Epiphany will have resolved by time your token Snapcaster ability is on the stack, so that you can then snap back the Sublime Epiphany if you have infinite mana or whatever.
right. I do think that if I'm playing one of the new 6-drop counter spells, though, I'm playing the end of the turn one that can cost 2 mana, but I do think this card is really sweet, and I like kind of what it's doing.
The only other thing I was going to say about Sublime Epiphany is it makes the Gear Hulk, Torrential Gear Hulk, more exciting, because this is
That's true.
probably you don't want to torrential. I guess you could flash in on your opponent's turn, torrential Gear Hulk, and Gear Hulk them with discontinuity, which is pretty sweet. Um, but Sublime Epiphany is probably the second strongest super expensive instant now.
Yeah, it's like that or the one that is only an instant with Aftermath. It's I forget what it's called, but it's 4 blue. You can bounce or put target spell
Commit
or
to memory.
yeah, spell or
Commit.
permanent fourth from the top of someone's library, and the memory is shuffle your graveyard into your Time Twister. You can do that with Gear Hulk, which is sweet because you can target the commit side and then do the memory side of the spell with Aftermath.
That's pretty sweet.
That's like the cool torrential Gear Hulk.
That's an interesting trick.
But yeah, this card's really sweet with Gearhawk. That's for sure. You just have to get it in your graveyard. Like that's what the other one, you could trick bind their land and then late game end their turn with Gearhawk, which is also really sweet. I mean, I want to play that card so bad.
So let's play that deck. Let's just play mono blue draw go with 4 main deck discontinuities.
Yeah, I'm done. All about it. Play some Snapcaster Mages, some Gearhawks, discontinuities, maybe a trick bind.
I'm all about Tails End. I feel like I've now played some games with Tails Ends in my deck, and Tails Ending a 3 fairy just feels super good.
Oh yeah. Rada.
Don't think Rada's a thing because Courser Crufix isn't a thing in Modern.
But this is an aggressive Courser, right? Like the problem with Courser is it's slow and meant to be more of a life game grind kind of play extra lands off the top of your deck. Rada.
Yes, we can talk about it.
Well, I feel we just include what we're saying. Rada, which is a 1 red green legendary creature elf warrior, 3/3. As long as it's your turn, Rada, Heart of Keld has first strike. You may look at the top card of your library at any time, and you may play lands from the top of your library. For 4 red and green, Rada gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of lands you control. Yeah, I think like the one consideration here is that like Courser Krufix doesn't not see play in Modern, right? It sees fringe play, but it like definitely sees one of play out of different land stacks or sideboard play, and Jund is a one of. This is just an aggressive version of that card. Instead of gaining life, you get the ability to just like get aggressive. It is a 3/3 versus a 2/4, which is worse because Bolt is a card that people play.
Right. Because my thought is that this is fighting with Gruul Spellbreaker for a spot in a Gruul Stompy deck, and I feel like Gruul Spellbreakers, it both has Trample and it has Riot and can't be messed with on your turn.
But I'd rather play this in Jund, I think, right? Where like getting lands off the top of my deck or even seeing what's on top of my deck is more valuable. Like being able to like look and be like, oh, if I cast this Bloodbraid Elf now, this is a blowout versus, oh, it's Thoughtseize on top of my deck. I might as well. And like, like the top effect there isn't even that bad, especially if you're playing Bobs. Like this in Bob is really powerful because you can kind of like stack your deck to be able to get those triggers in the way you want, or like fetch in a way that's more beneficial to you. Like that's one of the reasons you play Courser in Jund decks, right? It does have enough synergy with like half of what your deck is doing, and Rada doesn't necessarily not have that, and it's just a better threat than Courser, but it is a worse grind machine, which is what Jund wants to do. So I think I go back and forth on it. Next card is 9 lives. 1 white M21 rare enchantment, hexproof. If a source would deal damage to you, prevent that damage and put an incarnation counter on 9 lives. When there are 9 or more incarnation counters on 9 lives, exile it. When 9 lives leaves the battlefield, you lose the game. I've seen 2 different modes of trying to make this card work. The first one is as the like I can't lose the game effect, like a Phyrexian Unlife. That's like a little bit better than Phyrexian Unlife in some ways, and in some ways it's worse. It's better in the ways where you figure out ways to make it so counters. Like this in Solemnity means you actually can't lose the game ever. Right.
Well, that's the way it is with Phyrexian Unlife too.
Solemnity doesn't
prevent you from
getting infect counters.
Huh?
Solemnity doesn't prevent you from getting infect counters, does it?
I don't believe it says players can't get counters.
Does it?
I think.
Oh yeah, okay. Alright, so it works similarly with Phyrexian Unlife then. The cooler thing to do with this card is give it to your opponent and bounce it with a bounce all permanents in play to their owner's hands.
Like you harmless offering it to them?
Yeah, and then you just kill
it. That's pretty cute.
Because it kills them. If you get this into their hand, or like destroy all enchantments, right? Like this in like any type of effect like that, and they lose the game. Or like target player sacrifices an enchantment, which is like the scariest version because they might, if they have any other enchantment, it does nothing, but they also likely don't because this is Magic in constructed format.
Yeah, I mean, so because there's like Back to Nature, which is probably the easiest wipe all enchantments for just 2 mana that doesn't target, and it's in green and is an instant. So you could play a Naya colored harmless offering 9 lives Back to Nature deck. Although I kind of feel like, why aren't you just playing harmless offering Demonic Pact? That's so much more fun.
Is it more fun? Because I feel like this card's very cute.
I mean, it is sort of cute that you can cast 9 lives while you're still trying to set up your combo, and your opponent has to
kill you through the 9 lives being in play.
Right. But it's important to note that like 9 lives isn't always better than not having it, because if your opponent is dealing lots of little damage to you, then 9 lives is bad. Whereas like Phyrexian Unlife, like part of the strength of Phyrexian Unlife is you could take 1,000,000 damage and it will keep you from dying for that first 1,000,000 damage hit.
Mm-hmm. It cancels a turn worth of damage.
It counts as a turn worth of damage. Whereas 9 lives just, it doesn't matter what your life total is. When you cast 9 lives now, you have essentially a life total of 9 and everything only deals 1 damage to you. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely interesting. It's it's very interesting that now the Solemnity Phyrexian Unlife combo is now in Pioneer.
Yes, that's true.
Uh,
That's interesting.
so so now you can play 9 lives Solemnity as just like a prison style win condition in Pioneer. And once we get, we were talking before the cast. Now might be a good time to talk about our Patreon.
Yes,
But before the
absolutely.
cast, we were talking with some of the members of the Nobles of House Modern, hanging out with them in our Discord chat. And we were talking about Arena, because one cool thing that's happening is Arena, by the time you all are hearing this, Arena is now on Mac, which as a Mac user myself, I'm quite excited about that because I've been having to use weird backdoors to get into Play Arena. And so now finally it's going to be on Mac. Hooray.
It's
And
gonna be
Historic is blowing up in a big way
yeah.
on Arena. And we were talking about how they're already planning on releasing like an Amonkhet remastered for Arena at some point in the near future.
Mm-hmm.
So
Rumors
when that
are
happens,
this August.
Solemnity, huh?
Rumors are this August.
Okay. So when that happens, Solemnity 9 lives will be in Historic.
Correct.
And that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
That's a cool thing that can happen.
Big shout out to the Nobles of House Modern, including Andrew Kelso, Cam Albergini, and Brandon S. Russell. Thank you so much. Pinky's up to you, sirs. For those who don't know, basically, we have a patron. It's how Marshall is paid to help make all of this happen. We were literally, this podcast wouldn't work without the help of you, patrons, and people, future patrons and past patrons. And as part of that, there's a higher tier where basically at the beginning of it, right before we record every episode, we invite people to a private Discord. We just have conversation. We talk about what's going on. They get like sneak peeks into what we're going to talk about that week's episode, or even we talked about what we're probably going to talk about next week. It ends up that review episode season generally means that there's like all of these things I want to talk about written on a list that we have to wait until we're done reviewing the set to talk about. Hint, it's about Pioneer and whether I think it's going to survive longer than ever. And so yeah, they get to kind of hang out and chat and have a good time in the chat. And please check out the Patreon. There's a bunch of cool stuff there. And we'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on that and check it out. You also get an early version of the episode that we do that's raw. So there's no editing done. So you get all of the weird things where we're wrong. But yeah, definitely check out the Patreon. Also make sure to follow the podcast and me and Marshall on all the social media things and YouTube. If you're on YouTube right now, please subscribe, hit the bell, the little alert bell, and like it. Actually, likes matter a lot more than we even thought. So really appreciate if you just like it right there. And then obviously comment. We'd love to see, like, if we missed a card, next week when we do our last episode, if we missed a card over these 3 review episodes, we'll definitely still be able to like go back and cover some of them. So if we did miss something, please let us know. And if not, we'd love to hear what your favorite card is. Like, what card that we discussed is just the best card in M21 of all. Is it the Discontinue? What is the card that I love? I can't remember its name.
Discontinuity,
not discontinue. I was close.
Discontinue would have been a fine name for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So love to hear from you guys. And I'm at Kess Wiley on Twitter and Twitch and Instagram and everywhere on the planet.
And I'm at Marsh Unfocused.
And our other hosts, Mike and Ben, are also at Duddard, Duradd. And then Ben is at Ben Bateman Media on all the things. More things. And you can check out his new YouTube channel, Nerds and Suits. Also, I released a Nahiri deck tech last week. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that style of Commander deck tech. It was something I tried that's new and different, and I hate every joke I made, but I want to know if you liked them. So let me know. Cool. Continuing the rest of the set review, we do have one more day left after this. So Shacklegeist, 1 and a blue, Spirit, 2/2 flyer. Shacklegeist can block only creatures with flying, so it's got high flying. Tap 2 untapped spirits you control. Tap target creature you don't control. So this has the ability to kind of get stuff out of the way if you're trying to get damage in and flyers. I think it's weaker than other 2-drop options. I think even there's a better one in this set. But it does have, anytime there's a spirit that has a useful ability, which this definitely is, it's worth kind of taking a look at and seeing if there's an opportunity for it. It could be sideboard worthy if there is a grindy flyer deck you're trying to get around, or for the mirror. this could be like a mirror breaker. But otherwise, I think it's a little bit less than.
Yeah, I think it just doesn't do enough. It asks too much and doesn't give enough. Maybe if it had flash on
Yeah.
top of what it has now, but it's just not doing enough, I think. Spirits has got too many good 2-drops as it is.
All right, and now the return. It's been it's been since Kamigawa Block. We're getting them partially because we probably are never going to Kamigawa Block. So they're gonna make core sets and commander sets and all of those things about that instead. Sanctum of the, these are the shrines. It's a cycle of 5 uncommons and 1 rare. They accompany the original shrine series, the Hondens, hopefully. And they are legendary enchantments that all basically have an ability that for every shrine you have in play, you get something. And so the green one is at the beginning of each pre-combat main phase, add X mana of any color, where X is the number of shrines you control. The red one is 1 mana, discard a land card or shrine card. Sanctum of the Shattered Heart deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker, where X is the number of shrines you control. The black one is 1 and a black. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of shrines you control. Sanctum of Calm Waters, 3 and a blue. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, you may draw X cards, where X is the number of shrines you control. If you do, discard a card. Sanctum of Tranquil Light, 1 white, 5, and then you activate 5 and a white activated ability. Tap target creature. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each shrine you control. And then Sanctum of All, white, blue, black, red, green, all 5 colors, legendary enchantment, shrine. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may search your library and or graveyard for a shrine card and put it onto the battlefield. If you search your library this way, shuffle it. If an ability of another shrine you control triggers while you control 6 or more shrines, that ability triggers an additional time.
Yes. A lot of stuff. So I don't think shrines are gonna bust up modern. Well, I do think that these shrines are interesting. They're all interesting additions. I especially really like the black shrine, especially for multiplayer. Like, this set has already been out on Cockatrice, so I already have thrown together a 5-color shrines commander deck with, to say, Weatherlight Captain as the commander. And Sanctum Stonefangs gets it done. It's definitely one of your primary win conditions in the deck. So it's really aggressively costed too.
I think that I think the really I don't think shrines are out of the question in modern Pioneer historic to kind of begin with. They added the other Hondens to the other shrines to historic right before this. It was kind of like a preview to this being a thing. Partially because one of the things that's always been a limit to them is the lowest converted mana cost shrine was 3, right? So that's kind of not a strategy that's going to win you a game. But the fact that now you can like curve out 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop shrine that kills a creature, 4-drop shrine that draws, like, they all kind of start stacking for a lot of value. The black one is great at delaying the game, right? Like, you end up gaining so much life from it that you can kind of like really stabilize with it in play. And like, I think the white one's getting kind of hated on, but the fact that it like costs 1 mana is like almost actually its secret ability, right? It's more of a 1 white mana enchantment. This counts as a shrine. Ignore the rest of the text.
Right. And it's also important. It's important to note that it counts itself, so its ability actually only costs 5 by default.
And normally on turn 2, you're playing by turn 3 at least, you're going to play a shrine. So it's this 3-drop shrine. Turn 4, you should be able to start using it if you need to, and then it starts getting nutty if you're actually curving out 1-top, 2-drop, 3-drop, 4-drop.
Right.
I also think that like there's a lot of really good Enchantress like benefits. Like, there's the creature that was recently printed in the standard, like all the Theros
Setessan Champion.
Setessan Champion. That, and then there's even like pretty good in Modern and Pioneer, like all enchantments cost 1 less effects that are just like out there.
Yes, there's one that makes all enchantments cost 1 less, and you gain a life every time you cast an enchantment, which if you're playing shrines, you're a control deck, so you need to be gaining life.
So there's like a lot of weird, powerful things, and the value they gain you is nutso. Once you like are online, it's very hard to lose. And so I'm actually interested to see if someone can pull off the Shrine deck in any format. Now, for me, I'm probably going to first start in Gladiator on Arena, which is the singleton Canadian Highlander, but on Arena variant, where these are all legal and you can just play all of them, no problem. But I'm interested to see what other people do. Any other things on shrines?
I think one thing to note is the Red Shrine. The Red Shrine, I think, is simultaneously one of the weaker shrines, but gives you something that shores up what the overall shrine strategy has as a weakness, and that is they're legendary. You can't have more than one of a given shrine. So, but you want to be playing more than one of a given shrine because you want that consistency. So, Sanctum of Shattered Heights gives you something to do so that when you draw that second black shrine, you're not just drawing dead. Now what you've drawn is essentially a sort of a lightning bolt, which is not bad.
And
so
and the fact that like some of the shrines are bigger than that, right? They're like 5-drop shrines. Sanctum of All is a great example. The ability to also like it not only does it shore up the problem of legendary, like having a bunch of legendaries, it also shores up the problem of like needing to kill creatures that are in play that like you need to, because you need a way to stop things from attacking you, and there is a balancing issue of shrines plus removal spells, and this lets you kind of double up on them or make the cards you have already relevant. And the fact that it also like, and this is the other thing with drawing a card that helps, right? Like being able to draw cards off of shrines, off of the different things, makes them so that the legendary effect, if you have to play it and one of them has to die, you're still getting a card draw effect off of it. So
yeah, I'll definitely be interested to play this in standard, especially after Ravnica block rotates, because this strategy in standard with Calyx is something I'd really like to play around with. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what these cards do.
I hope Calyx is dope in the long run.
I mean, Calyx was dope when I drew it in that Commander game.
I meant
like
more
being
like
able to turn anything into an O-ring felt pretty good.
I meant more like as a character, because like it kind of sucks that there was like no Theros story, right? Because like on paper, Calyx is currently, especially now that Dak is dead, the character I look the most alike. He also has my name with an A at the front. So like
Calyx Essler.
Yeah, or no, Calyx. Yeah. He like moved the K. So
Uh-huh.
like I want to be all about him, but like he kind of just, the card isn't that exciting in like my life of playing Magic, not playing too much enchantressy things. And story wise, like all we know is he like kind of broke the rules of Magic story by existing, and then we don't, and he's like kind of a bad guy to hunt Elspeth, right? Like he, like a god can create a planeswalker.
So that's what it is. He's a creation of Klothys.
I believe so, yes, to hunt down Elspeth.
Maybe he was a human that was given his powers by Klothys.
Maybe.
But then that does imply that a human can be granted a spark by a god.
Right.
But I mean, I guess Xenagos has already told us that a planeswalker can use their spark to turn themselves into a god. So
and maybe it's Xenagos' spark, right? Maybe that's actually, like, we don't know because we don't have the story of this set.
That's going to be my headcanon now.
Okay.
Klothys came along, had Xenagos' spark because she like subsumed him, and is just like, I don't want this. I like being a god.
She's the red-green god. Well, and she's a red-green god. She has the ability to, like, when things die, she collects them, I guess, or keeps them there. And so, or make sure they stay dead, however you want to kind of put it. And so, yeah, I'm fine with that. That all makes sense to me. All right, I'm happy with it. Cool. Calyx needs to be dope. I need more Calyx so I can just be on board. Baron Tolarian Archmage. 1 blue, legendary creature, human wizard. When Baron Tolarian Archmage enters the battlefield, return up to one target other creature or planeswalker to its owner's hand. At the beginning of your end step, if a permanent was put into your hand from the battlefield this turn, draw a card. This guy is really sweet.
So excited.
I think he does the thing I'm starting to dislike, which is like here is a strategy. Draw a card if you do it.
Yes. Yes, Wizards has the last year Wizards has planted a lot of like draw a card for doing absolutely nothing at all. Like most exemplified by Chulane, Teller of Tales, who's just like, hey, draw cards when you just play the game of Magic. Draw extra cards for playing Magic.
And play extra lands.
Yeah, and play extra lands, yeah.
And Baron, so like
nuts.
And Baron does have the like there are ways to go infinite with him, right? Isn't there like an artifact creature that does this bounce effect that if you make it cheap enough, you just go infinite?
Well, it only triggers once, and it only draws you one card no matter how many permanents were put into your hand.
Oh, okay.
So,
okay. That's a little bit
Baron,
less dangerous.
Yeah, so the thing I like about Baron is, one, I'm a huge fan of the old Magic storyline. I'm so glad that Baron got a good card finally, because his old card was bad. So Baron, he's a bit like the part of 3 Fairy that is not so obnoxious, the getting to bounce and draw cards. And we were talking about earlier Niambi, and Baron and Niambi just work together to draw you cards and gain you life kind of indefinitely. And it's really difficult for for your opponent to remove either of them. And Baron is a legendary creature, so you can play multiple Barons and pitch them to Niambi. One thing we didn't talk about with Niambi that I like is you can play 4 Niambis in your Niambi deck, because every additional Niambi you draw is just 2 cards.
Is a 3-mana draw.
Is an instant divination, which is pretty sweet. And so Baron and her, like, they're 2 great tastes that taste great together. And
by the way, I disagree on your Teferi statement, going back a little bit, that it's the not egregious part, because I'm thinking of the times that this effect has been good, which I think this is maybe one of those times, right? The Mana War effect. And every single time that effect has been good, it's been too good, or like kind of insane, right? Like you have... And it's
like
always,
Reflector Mage.
Yeah, you have Reflector Mage. You have 3 Fairy. You have Jace, the Mind Sculptor. You have now Baron, and you have Mana War, right? Back in the day, Mana War was like the best creature in Magic. And so I'm interested to see how powerful Baron is moving into Standard, even into Modern, if you're able to take advantage of the second half of its ability. But like just on the front, there's a lot of really powerful stuff here.
I'm really excited about Baron for potentially showing up in ninjas.
Oh, sweet.
Because that's a way you can return permanents to your hand, and Baron just feels also like a good guy to secretly be a ninja when he attacks. So, as a big fan of modern ninjas, I'm definitely going to be playing around with the potential of a Baron or 2 in my ninja deck.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I believe this is the last card until I look at like the big dump that hundreds of cards are in. But this is the last, I believe, important card from my perspective. And there's 2 more. Oh no, we're good. Okay, so the next card,
unless you wanted to talk about Unleash Fury,
yeah,
but we've had effects like Unleash Fury before that don't do anything.
No, people are pretty excited about this, and we haven't had that many. I mean, like Berserk is like an all-star, right? Like that's a card that
I guess because we've had Double Cleave and stuff that haven't done anything, and that's basically Double Cleave. But yeah, we can talk about Unleash Fury.
So Unleash Fury is 1 red instant, double the power of target creature until end of turn. I'm looking if there is that many of those effects. I don't think there are. Double Cleave is the card you mentioned.
So yeah, there's like Double Cleave and Psychotic Fury, which both give double strike, which you could argue is not strictly better than doubling a creature's power, but it sometimes is better. It's definitely comparable to.
Sure, and the fact that it's 1 in a red versus like
one in a Boros.
Is this better than Assault Strobe? And the fact that it's an instant speed 1 does make it so. It is, I think.
Yeah, but Assault Strobe, I don't think ever saw any real play. And Assault Strobe, if you're in the market for that effect, you'd rather pay 1 mana for it than 2.
Sure.
Now
this on a double striking creature.
Yeah, not bad, not bad.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think it also, I think people are maybe looking at it with Embercleave, like this and Embercleave together do insane things.
Yes. Yes.
And this complete
That's
additional Ember Cleave, so it does that kind of that game.
Yep. Yep,
Um,
I'm interested for it for other formats, and I think it probably will play something in standard, but I don't know if it's relevant for modern.
Sure. And the next card is, and this was our preview card, Ghostly Pilferer, 1 and a blue. Spirit Rogue, 2/1. When Ghostly Pilferer becomes untapped, you may pay 2. If you do, draw a card. Whenever an opponent casts a spell from anywhere other than your hand, draw a card. Discard a card. It becomes unblockable. This was our preview card. We did a whole 15-minute hot take on it. This card is the sickest. This would be my favorite card if a card that didn't say end the turn didn't exist.
Yeah. And this is like one of the reasons why Shacklegeist is less impressive to me. Because if I'm playing a 2-drop spirit, I want something like this. Somebody who's like discouraging my opponent from flashing back or cascading spells, who's also able to always get in there and can also draw me cards. Like, that's a lot more exciting, I think, than tapping 2 of my guys to tap one of your guys.
And I think we were talking, like, at the time we talked about companions, right? That was like one thing that was like, this is obviously a plant to fight it, but it ends up it's actually a fight against every single major mechanic from this year. Like, it's really good against adventure cards, it's really good against escape cards, and it's really good against companions, right? So like all 3 of those, and all of them
was.
Yes,
it was.
It's no longer good. Well, it's good against Luros, right?
True, it is good against Luros.
And then going into
Emery and stuff like that.
And Emery, and there's like a ton of cards that are just like very good. Even Urza, right? Like it hits their ultimate ability.
Right, because Urza exiles the card and then casts it from exile.
Yeah. So like it does hit a lot of random stuff, and even some of the new stuff in this set, it's good against. Like it's just a good hate bear for every format. Added to the fact that it's an aggressive threat that's a card draw engine that does all the other things that we kind of talked about. I like still really love this card. I think it's really good. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
Nope. I'm still real interested in it, and I was doing a brew around it for Pioneer because I wanted to play with it and try and abuse the discard part of it with Madness, and so I always go for the smallest card pool possible when brewing decks if all the cards you could possibly play are in it. And so playing with a lot of the Madness cards out of Shadows over Innistrad. So you got the Madness Unsummon and the Madness Serum Visions, or not Serum Visions, Sleight of Hand, that are both in Ghostly Pilferer's colors. And also you probably play like a blue-red and play Fiery Temper or whatever.
Okay. But, that sounds sweet.
Yeah,
I'm down.
I like some Ghostly Pilferer. I think it's sweet.
I'm looking through the big dump of the last day cards, and I'm seeing if there's anything in here that is specifically worth looking at. Oh, I found your Dwarf Soldier. The 1/3 is interesting though. That is a power and toughness that has never existed for its cost.
A 1/3 for 1?
Yeah, I believe that is new. So that's cool. With not Defender or something,
Right. I think there's maybe one card worth talking about in this dump, and that's Goblin Wizardry.
Go for
it. So Goblin Wizardry costs 3 and a red for an instant. Create 2 1/1 red Goblin Wizard creature tokens. They have prowess. So I don't think this is necessarily super playable. However, it is 4 mana that makes 2 guys, and then those 2 guys both have prowess. So when you cast spells, that 2 power becomes 4 power, and keeps multiplying. So it's sort of interesting in a Spellslinger prowess deck. Like, we have prowess decks, and having a prowess card that makes prowess dudes and triggers your other prowess dudes seems worth taking a look at. And it's an instant, so it's the best kind of prowess enabler.
Wait, it's an instant? I thought it was a sorcery.
Nope, it's an instant.
Oh, I'm more
so
on
4
board
mana.
Now. Okay.
4 mana instant, make 2 1/1 prowess guys, and they are goblin wizards, so they have 2 relevant creature types. Interesting thing from the FAQ, the creature type is also the name of the token, so the tokens will also be named Goblin Wizard, which is also the name of a creature from the dark. So if for some reason your opponent played Runed Halo, naming Goblin Wizard, it's protected from these tokens and from that creature from the dark.
Really? Is it actually double up?
Yeah, because the creature is called Goblin Wizard.
I thought tokens were weird and don't have names.
No, tokens have the names of their creature type if they haven't been given a name.
Take a goblin from your hand and put it directly into play. Treat this goblin as if it was just summoned. Target goblin gains protection from white until end of turn. That's not even a terrible card.
Oh, it's not a terrible card. I own a Goblin Wizard, and my second commander deck I ever made was a Wart Boggart Anti, just goblins deck. And yeah, so Goblin Wizard just taps to put a goblin from your hand into play, which is pretty sweet, and protects all your guys from Swords to Plowshares. So he's not the worst.
Okay,
he's a 4-mana 1/1, but
sure.
But yeah, so Goblin Wizardry. I don't know if they're necessarily super playable, but this is a pretty cool, close to playable effect if it's not for a prowess.
Yeah, it's
a deck
almost there. And I think it could be there for more recent formats, right? It doesn't have to necessarily be standard, but I do think it misses it just a bit.
Yeah.
Um,
We've definitely never gotten something like this before, so it's a cool thing that makes an instant that makes prowess creature tokens is a new thing, and the art's funny. Like,
oh yeah,
it's like a goblin using his wand to light one of his farts on fire. Like, this is the principle of humor here.
All right, so that's it. That's the last card. We're ending on wand lighting farts on fire. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening and doing the normal set review thing. Back to our normal random subject matter starting next week. We'll also make sure to follow, subscribe, like, bell, all those things. Thank you so much, and check out our Patreon. I am at Kess Wiley on everything. Marshall is...
I'm at Marsh Unfocused.
And make sure to check out the other videos. We had a bunch of cool stuff come out this week. We had a video. Our hot take last week was about Garrick and Vivian, and like how Vivian has taken up a lot of the design space Garrick used to be responsible for. So we kind of talked about what we think about that. We had a deck tech on Nahiri Commander deck come out. And we did some video streaming onto the YouTube channel with the early preview, so that was a cool thing that's up still, so you can check that out. And yeah, all the good stuff, and thank you so much, Marshall, for jumping on.
Happy to do it.
Perfect. All right, thanks everybody. We'll talk to you guys next week.
Peace out.
This has been a production of Time Traveler Media, sending podcasts into the future.